Hey, welcome back to Happy Little No Trees. If you're just tuning in, we are in the process. I've done some videos recently on OpenDRT as an OFX. I've done what is a DRT, and today we're going to really do a deep dive for a couple minutes into a tool that I wish I could put out into the world, but I can't because I can't get it to work on any computer but my own. But I feel like I just want to share it because it gives me excitement and joy because it's something I've been trying to get to work for a while, and that is a photochemical, true-to-life filmic response, trying to account for everything that goes into making a Technicolor print. And so we're going to talk through that right now, today, if we can. So thank you for coming along. This is, so we just start here. We can see what we have going on here. We can just shut this one off and turn that off. And just turn this off. So this is if a CST straight out to with luminance mapping. This is OpenDRT, and then this is my Technicolor print, and it is not ready. It's not how I would want it to look. It's completely different than, it's not exactly what I'm going for in terms of look because it's raw. We just loaded it up. There is nothing going on. So we're going to just turn all this off because we're talking about Technicolor DRT. And all these cool things. So just out of the gate, there's your normal pipeline config. Straight is straight to display. This is, I'm going to change the title of this, output to display, and call it output display magic, because that's what it's doing. I can take the signal at this point and tell it, conform it to 2.2 and with the normal math that you would do, and it don't look right. And I can tell it to do 2.4 and it don't look right. But I can tell it to do magic, and it is like so close. It just needs to be dialed in. And that's what the rest of these selections are for. I don't know. It's magic. But what we're doing when we talk about, so I guess we got to start somewhere with what is Technicolor. And Technicolor is this unique process, and I think I have some stills yonder. Here we go. Yeah. Let's just see. So we have this. Let's just turn this one off. So we have magenta here, and then we have cyan. So we have these three. As we're looking at this timeline, you can see here we have these three things from this nice lady here. Now, what's really cool is you'd be like, all right, so you have these three dyes. Like they have a certain look. You can look at in our vector scope. If we bring up the vector scope, you can see how the yellow dye comes out and then kind of at this max potential around 75% saturation, kind of just kicks. And that's the darkest part of our image. That's her hair and everything like that. And then it kind of curves and kind of curves back in towards white. The same is true for our blue. Look at this blue. Comes up and then kind of just pulls back down and kicks over. It has a really unique, so there's like a hue shift going on at a certain point as it comes down into the shadows. And then here, similar kind of pattern with magenta. Now, if we take these guys here and we just stack them up like this, you go, well, now we just see yellow. But if we just change, so this is just doing simple math. This isn't crazy. This isn't what's going on in the DRT. You can see if we do this, and we're just doing simple math here, and one of these guys is not like the other because they don't line up. But if we now just position her eyes to match, kind of sorta, and then I think this one needs to move a little bit too. Come on. To the line up. Let's just zoom. Let's redo all the zooms on these and get them to be positioned right there. Just matching them up, and then this one's still off. We're just going to make that slight adjustment. And so this is just a simple idea of math, but we're just lining up the images. And now we have full color going on in our image that we didn't have before. Just out of alignment right there. Let's see how it comes in and is now in color. Like, look at, we have red, we have all these colors. Now that we got her image, these 3 shots in aligned, she's colorful. But that's not what we had when we started. We had different dye plates. And so in a very simplistic way, that's the simple way of layering those things and doing that math. And that is what happened. They would take, you would expose 3 different films, or 2 film stocks. One was would be filtered light, so it was only getting exposed to green light. Another stock was bipack, so it would get it would go through a magenta filter, which would get rid of the green light, but then it would only expose the blue layer, and then whatever light was left would be red, which would expose another film stock behind it. And so you'd have 3 black and white registers. They would also then flash a black negative off the green layer, and to a lesser degree than the green layer, so it would add a little contrast and depth. Then they would take those, Technicolor Process 5 would put them in a gel matrix based off of that black and white matte, paint it, and then they would press it just like you would if you were your ink printing and screen printing, and push it onto a film emulation that would soak up that dye and press it into a flat sheet. Then they'd take those 4 printed film things, press them all together in a special machine and cook it. And so that just press it out, and that was the finished film. And then they reuse the matrix, make another print, and make adjustments. And they would use different dyes. They would make tweaks and adjustments to the dye and the character of the dye, and that's how these films got the distinct look that they have. They also had a lot of set design that went into making sure that when it got to this point, it looked good. So let's go back to our timeline here, where we have, oops, we don't show that yet. That's for a different video that I'm doing. We're back to here. Here we go. And we're going to go back to the color page. What this is doing is, in this first section, is it's taking our input feed of RGB and kind of tweaking it and recontextualizing it into red, green, and blue, black and white registers. And you can do things like, I've tried to name these things. For me, they're more reference. This is kind of like if our camera had a dynamic range of like 14 stops, and we're targeting a finished product range of like 5 stocks. And then exposure is kind of a push-pull on that compression of processing that film stock. And you can see how that shifts around. And then pivot point kind of is that same thing, but it kind of changes how those compression things and all that functions to create these black and white negatives. Saturation control is, you'll see it in the finished product. It's very subtle, and then these ones down here, obviously, it puts a little control on what you're feeding it, because our high dynamic ranged cameras can send too much information to what's going on in the rest of the chain, and so sat pinch kind of controls that, because if you let it go wild, you start getting colors that are very emissive, and that's wrong for what we're trying to do. And so you just want to get it, it's kind of, I have a lot of the settings just right. Green flash is like what I said. Max density here is kind of a control. It's a soft lift on your low end with a slight bend. It's a very gentle lift, and I don't have the curve control to it, but that's fine. It's in case of emergency, if things hit the floor too funny in the process. Green flash is, like I said, a flashing of your green negative. And so we have these diagnostics that we can see. We already have, here's our cyan plate. Does it look like the ones we saw in the beginning? Not necessarily, but we're going to get there. And we're putting them back together, similar but different than the simple math that we did in the timeline. And so you can see here with our black, if we flash that, it's developing the black and white negative off the grain for black using our black dye. We also have a grain, that's a whole different thing. You can see our linear ramps. And they're pretty one-noted in terms of the hues, because we're not there yet. We're just kind of establishing our exposure levels and how our film was processed that was captured in the camera. And this does a lot, and this actually you can tweak and change shot to shot, and I kind of recommend that in terms of how it's shaping what's going on. Then we have dye selection, so you can pick my presets right here. That's fun. My big jam is right now electric blue, true magenta, saffron yellow. I'm sorry I said that you can pick this. It's sadly, I'm just showing something that I'm right now the only one that has access to or can use, because I don't know how to code for other systems besides my own. And so that is sad. So if you know somebody that wants to maybe talk to me about this, I don't know, figure something out. But we have color pictures. This lets us do some other fun things. Like we can say, I don't like electric blue. What is electric blue? Well, this is electric blue. This is pure blue, pure cyan. So we can actually now choose our own cyan. We can pick whatever dye hue we want our cyan to be. Well, maybe we want it to be a little bit bluer, and you can see how that is lively changing how all these dye layers interact and affect with each other right on this image in the moment, right like so. And that starts to shape things. That gets us somewhere. Well, kind of once you pick your dye, once I pick my dyes, I'm kind of done with that. I don't want to change that, because if I change things in this next section, that's when it's going to get crazy. And what we're going to want to do is actually bring up our linear ramps. And you can see, compared to the linear ramp that we saw with the different yellow, magenta, and blue dyed images of Our Lady, they're pretty much just straight lines out of the box. That's not cool. That's not great. It doesn't look the best, I don't think. And that's what these settings here. So we can tweak in the middle what's going on and kind of just put a little bend in that curve. Watch the vector scope, how it moves. See how it's affecting all that? And you go, wait a sec, but you're affecting all of them globally, Greg. You really want to do that? No. We can enable individual, and these are offsets. So now we're just affecting how that bend and jiggle. We can actually deactivate it, neutralize it, or expand it per plate. So we have a global control, I have a global control, and then individual controls. But the one that does the magic is this high density control. So this is high density. Leave it in the comments. Is this the brightest part of the image or the darkest part? It's the darkest. And you can see we're going to just pinch, and if we look at our vector scope, what's happening is we're starting to get that little, if you pinch hard, you see how it's starting to kick? That characteristic curve that existed in our original test bed images. And now the sat threshold is just kind of saying at what point along the scale, the tone scale derived from our black and white registers, where this dye is applied, should we start pinching. And then we can change how quick and how fast that pinch happens. And we can also extend which way that shift is happening. So in our test images, they all kind of drifted this way. And again, we have the control to do offsets. So if we don't want our cyan to be as strongly bent, and you can see how it's affecting up in our image, how cyan is even more bent to black, right, like so. We can kind of tweak and shape everything because it's all working offset off that global control. And you go, wait a sec, well, what does this look like now? If we can just go back to our cyan, you can see we're starting to shape some of that look. So we can pull this hue shift away, kind of pull this down even more, kind of just get it start looking like we did in our, what you see, we'll see if you were to look at scans of things. Low density works on the high end, and so we start to pull in how fast are we bleeding off the dye as the dye is hit by light. How fast is it bleeding off by the projector light to be white? So as more light hits it, as it's more thin, is it how true is it staying to that pure dye state versus getting dark. So this technically sets what our true pure dye color is, and then this low density and the mid density kind of affect how that dye gets to white as light is getting pushed through it. And again, it has its own hue shift. Kind of be careful with that one. It gets a little aggressive in terms of how it kind of bends it, but you get some nice little tweaks, and you can see that in the vector scope. And you start getting this really unique shape. And then we can turn off that, and you can see we're starting that. You can also go in and do this by eye. You don't need to be looking at your curves, and you can just look for what is feeling good and feeling right, and everything like that. And then we have our projector light, where we can choose a couple different preset options that I have, or you can go custom again and say my projector light is whatever I want it to be. My projector is a blue projector. That's weird. But you could do it. It's totally fine. It's within the bounds of you making the dye print you want, because that's what would happen when they were in the Technicolor Dreambox world of making it. They had tons of dyes that they were always testing to see what would get the best response, what would make the best image. And now you get, well, I get access to it. I can't. Still sad that I don't know how to get this out to the world. But in linear exposure, kind of, you're just popping, how bright is that light? So at 1, it's set to the max value of Rec 709 image, and then you can you can see how it leaves behind the darkest parts. You're just kind of pushing more light through your film stock with that control there. Linear contrast is just a post-processing adjustment, because sometimes you need to do some tweaks and various things. And then there's grain pulling and other stuff that you can kind of make how you want grain to work in the image, and how dusty you want it to be, and how that all functions in and of itself. And you have all this expressive control to create your image. And yeah, I'm a big fan of that, or how that works. And just gonna kind of tweak things like this. And this is, if you look at the vector scope, this feels like, if you're looking at this, it feels like a colorful image. There's greens, there's her blue jacket, there's everything. But the vector scope, we are almost within the littlest circle of saturation, yet the image feels lively and colorful. And that is what is so fun about this. Bring some of that color back, take off some of the green flash of the black negative right there. And yeah, maybe we pinch this down a little bit more. You can see how it's just kicking in on those shadows, just to give a little bit more contrast to what's going on. That is looking nice, that is looking rich, and that is a look that you can then go boopity-boop, apply the grade, and now it's going to transfer. And we did that with 2 nodes. We went into Davinci Wide Intermediate and now out to a Technicolor style print with the same features and functionality that would have existed if putting the dyes together and making the magic happen. And yeah, that just feels alive. But look at the vector scope. When I first started getting close to what I was realizing this to be, like, I was just like, this can't be right. Like, it doesn't feel like it should be this tightly bound up in saturation. And yet the image looks good. And it looks fine. And we can actually get a little bit more. We can push it out and get a little bit more color with the set pinch control here. And how that is working. Kind of tweak some of that. And now, yeah, maybe it's a little more vibrant, but it's not emissive. You don't want to get emissive. That is, and you still want to have some character roll off. But this is all about shaping that negative that we put these dyes onto. And that's what we're doing in this section. We're not affecting the dyes or anything like that. We're affecting that black and white register, which maybe we should make that be a diagnostic. So there is that. She's looking good there. Maybe bring up, how does this work again? Is this working good again? Yeah, that is just a little toe on those shadows. Yeah, we can go back and shot match that by just applying the grade. That looks good. Bam! I like it. I would watch that. Anyways, happy little notaries signing off. I am so sorry that maybe someday I will figure out how to make this available to the world. Until somebody helps me figure that out, I am kind of stuck with, I'm the only one that knows how to do this, and made this thing that is really cool and fun too. That grain is actually really nice in terms of how it's doing its thing. So the idea of pulling and then you can, the strength is kind of how it blends in with all of it, so you can actually make it very grainy, or that's very apparent, or it's just how does it fit and sit in the image. Blur kind of affects the kernel. I got to make a change to the code for that. See this, how fast it's changing, its positioning, and things like that. With the dye pulling effect, you kind of got to find a right balance of, yeah. Anyways, I've been talking too long. I'm out of here. Bye. Have a happy little Notary Day.